as I said at the beginning, Angie and I are delighted to be here this morning to share with you again. And, we continue in the ministry that God has called us to establish, which is Arise Now. And just to say real briefly what that is about, some of you who have been here regularly over the last few summers will probably remember, but for those who may not have heard what we're about. So my full-time job is a city bus driver for Grand River Transit. I'm continuing to do that. And but Angie and I, 3 years ago, started a ministry called Arise Now, which we felt like God was calling us to launch into. And so we do 4 things as Arise Now. We do what we're doing here this morning, where we go to places wherever the Lord opens up a door for us to go and share and preach and minister. We go and are glad for those opportunities. And so we've been to a variety of places over the last number of years and connected with a lot of people, and so we're very grateful for that. So we do that. Angie and I have written books, and numerous ones of you have bought our books, and trust they've been an encouragement to you. I've written 3 books, Lessons Learned on the Seat of My Bus, My Bicycle, and My Truck, from stories of life from bus driving, truck driving, and my life as a mountain bike racer. And they're just everyday stories that I trust as we share them will bring encouragement to the people who read them in your life where you're at. And Angie's written a book called All My Rooms. It's a journey of inviting Jesus into every part of our lives, likening our lives to the rooms of a house. And so we have those books along with us again today. If anyone is interested, you can check with us after, and we'd be glad to hook you up with one of them. So we do speaking books, and we make short videos, 2-minute wake-up calls that we post on YouTube and Facebook or send out via email. Just short little inspirational videos. We've made, over the last 2 years, 2+ years, we've made, I think, 230+ videos, and been really blessed with the opportunity that we have to share the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ, through social media. And it's enabled us to connect with a lot of people who we would never be able to connect with. And so we're very glad for that opportunity. And the 4th thing that we do is for the last 2 years, we've had the privilege of being on the radio in Brantford, and that continues. We're on Friday afternoons and Friday nights on 2 different stations. And if you're interested at all in any of that, you don't have to be able to pick it up on your radio. You can now listen through your computer or your tablet or your smartphone. If you go to arisenow.ca, there's listen live links, and you can check that out. So we've been very grateful and thankful to God for the opportunities that He's given us. And so, this morning I'm going to share another lesson learned on the seat of my bus. This is a book that I think a number of you have bought, and trust it's been an encouragement. And what I'm going to share this morning, because the learning continues. This book came out 3 years ago, and since that time I've still been driving bus, and so the lessons continue. So the lesson that we're going to talk about this morning is not in the book, but I'm just holding this book up to show you that that's the title, and that's what it looks like. And so this lesson happened, I'd say maybe about 2 years ago. And it starts with this. Now, if I hold this sign up, does this look familiar to any of you? If you are in a city, Stratford or Kitchener, Waterloo, or any other city, wherever there is a city bus, you're going to see this sign on the back left corner. Okay? And so let me just explain what this is if you're not familiar with it. You should know, because it's a law in Ontario. It came into effect, I think, around 2005. Okay? So I had been driving bus at that time for about 4 years. And the province of Ontario decided it would be a good idea to help transit buses stay on time a little better. So what they did is they came up with this law that if a city bus is in a bus bay that is off of the lane of traffic, that when the bus puts its signal on, hence this bright light right here, if the bus puts its left signal on to move back into the lane of traffic, that the traffic coming up behind that bus must yield to the bus. And so I've shared this in a few other places, and every time I share this, there's always a few people that go, "Oh, I never knew that." So I think, well, this part of this is twofold. There's a lesson we can learn, and the other is just educating the public to help with, the life of a city bus driver go better. So this law came into effect. There wasn't a lot of fanfare about it, and we as bus drivers feel like there hasn't even been a great deal of enforcement on this. But I will say that probably about 2 or 3 years after the law came into effect, I was on University Avenue at King Street in Waterloo, and there's a place where we have bus bays, so we're off of the lane of traffic. I put my signal on to move back into the lane of traffic, and I think I waited for probably about 10 cars. Just kept coming and coming, and we start to kind of nose our way out a bit, so people get the idea, like, his signal's on, oh, his front end's moving, maybe he actually does want in the lane. And so it was about the 10th car that went by me, and all of a sudden I got out, and an unmarked police officer pulled in front of me and got the last car. And I was, yes. Finally, I saw this happen. And so it does happen, but not a whole lot. So anyway, so this is the life in which I live. This is what I deal with, and it's a part of my day in many, in numerous occasions, is dealing with cars and merging in and out of traffic, and so the story I'm going to tell you happened about 2 years ago. I was on River at Ottawa in Kitchener, if you're familiar with that area, the Stanley Park Mall area, and I was on River Road in a bus bay, and I loaded everybody up, I closed the doors, I put my signal on, and then I'm watching in my mirror, and I see this opening, and I see a car, but it's a little ways off. I think, okay, I can go. Well, this car had no intention of yielding to me. And so as I'm pulling out, they, instead of hitting the brakes like they should, they hit the accelerator. And out and around me, thankfully there was no collision, out and around me they go, and they're waving their hands and saluting me with fingers and all sorts of things. And they are not very happy with me. And wouldn't you know it, the light just ahead of us is red. Great. And I pull up right beside him. And it's a nice day, nice summer day, much like today, so my window is open on the side of the bus, his windows are down, and we're right beside each other at the light, and he's mad at me. And so he's yelling and screaming and waving and whatnot, and he says to me, "What do you think? You can just pull out whenever you want?" And I'm kind of like, well, actually I can, but so I didn't say that, and I don't always, most of the time I don't engage in conversation with angry pedestrians or angry motorists. But in this situation, I just said in a calm voice, I said to him, "Well, actually, sir, the law says that when I put my signal on in the bus bay, that you need to yield to me." Well, he didn't particularly like that answer. And so his response back to me was, "I know the rules of the road. I drive for a living." And I was like, okay, I think this conversation's over. It was clear I wasn't going to get anywhere in that moment with this fellow. And I had two thoughts real quick go through my mind. The first one was, well, good luck with that excuse if a policeman ever pulls you over. And the second, which leads us into the lesson we can learn from this situation, comes from Proverbs chapter 16, which is just after what we had read here a minute ago. Proverbs 16 verse 25 says, "There is a way that seems right to a man, but in the end it leads to death. Now that may seem kind of harsh because, hopefully just because you don't know a certain rule of the road doesn't mean you're going to end up dying, although it could. If you don't know that red lights mean stop and you go through them, it could end up in a serious tragedy. But there is a way that seems right to a man, and in the end, it leads to death. So this got me thinking. I pondered this scenario that I just described to you for quite a while. And I got thinking about what is it about when we are confronted with something that is truth that keeps us from receiving it. Hence the title of the message today, Are You Teachable? In that brief interaction with this fellow at the lights at River in Ottawa, I knew that this guy was not teachable. And we hire a lot of new people that come into Grand River Transit. And I love the people who come with this attitude of, I want to learn and I'm teachable. But every once in a while, we get somebody who comes and they already know everything before they start. And it doesn't usually go very well for them. In fact, there was one of the other things I do is I drive milk truck for Angie's brother one weekend a month. I go rolling through this intersection occasionally in the Ramsire milk truck. And in the milk truck world, there was this one milk truck driver who was affectionately called by all the other milk truck drivers as Mr. Know-It-All. In fact, one of the other guys gave him the nickname Google because he knows everything. And it was funny because, and there's a link to this church in that, is that when that happened, this guy got the nickname Google. I drove by here one day in the milk truck, and Rob, I assume Rob puts the signs out front here? Dave. Oh, Dave does. Okay, well, Dave, you had put a sign out at the front of the church here that says, Google doesn't have all the answers. And I was like, yes! Google doesn't have all the answers, so Mr. Know-It-All doesn't have it all either. But what is it when we are confronted with truth that keeps us from embracing it? Well, I want to suggest to you this morning that it's pride. It's pride. Proverbs 16, verse 18, and there's numerous verses in Proverbs about heeding correction and about pride. If you read through the book, you'll see those themes throughout. But Proverbs 16, verse 18 says, pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. So what is the opposite of pride? Well, it's humility. And so this morning I want to give you two definitions of humility that I came across in the last couple of years, and they have just really blessed me, and I trust as I share them with you, they will be a blessing to you as well. The first one is this. Humility is low self-preoccupation, not low self-esteem. I'll say that again so you get it. Humility is low self-preoccupation, not low self-esteem. And so many times we think of, well, if I'm humble, I'm just like putting myself down, and oh, woe is me, I'm no good at anything, and that's not really humility. True humility, as we see through the scriptures, is that you know who you are and who God has created you to be, and it's okay to say that I am actually good at this, because it's the gift that God has given you. So it's knowing who you are, but you're not preoccupied with that, so that you can use the gifts that God has given you to be a blessing to others. It's a beautiful picture. Someone who knows who they are and was not preoccupied with that, and then uses those gifts to serve others. It's how we as followers of Jesus can be a blessing to the world around us. It's how you, as Shakespeare Presbyterian Church, who you say in your vision statement that you are Christ's hands to the community. It's you know who you are and what you're gifted to do, but you're not preoccupied with that, and then you serve others with it. So that's definition number one. It's low self-preoccupation, not low self-esteem. And the definition number two, which really connects with this theme of what we're talking about this morning, are we teachable, is this. Humility is the ability to make changes when confronted with the truth. I'll say it again. Humility is the ability to make changes when confronted with the truth. So this fella at this intersection is confronted with the truth. And his response is, I know the rules of the road. I drive for a living. Who are you to tell me how it is? It's not a humility kind of response. So let me give you a personal example of how this, I could give you tons of how this has impacted me, but this one in particular. So back in the spring of this year, Angie and I were on our way on a Sunday morning. We were speaking at a church in Drayton, and I was going to talk about this theme. I was going to share this story about this sign, and so I've been pondering all week about humility and how to live and walk that out. And so we're driving along to Drayton, and we were taking roads that I had never driven on. And I'm a country guy, even though I live in the city. I love driving through the country, and I grew up on a farm. I'm looking around at the farms and enjoying the beauty of God's creation. And, so we're just having a nice drive, and then we go by this building. I'm like, oh, that looks like a church. I wonder what the name of it is. And I'm looking, and then as I'm looking, Angie sees a car coming the other way on the road, and she's just like, you might want to keep your eyes looking straight ahead while there's cars coming towards us. Now, how many of you like when your spouse gives you driving advice? You don't have to raise your hands, but just do it internally. Maybe no hands would go up. And you know what? In that moment, something rose up in me, kind of like that guy at the intersection is like, I drive for a living, which I do. Why do you think you got to tell me how to drive? Like, how do I drive the rest of the week? But here we are on our way where I'm going to preach a sermon about this. So the rubber hits the road, so to speak, in that moment. And I'm like, well, right, Angie, I think you're right. It probably would be better if I keep my eyes looking straight ahead. But there are numerous examples that we could all think of where we are confronted in situations with corrections, be they small or big. And how do we respond in that? Humility is the ability to make changes when confronted with the truth. And I want us to ponder three M words this morning as we think about that. The first one, in the passage that we read there in Proverbs 15, the first verse is verse 30, which says, light in the messenger's eyes brings joy to the heart. Good news gives health to the bones. So the first M word is messenger. Sometimes we can't even hear the message or the correction that God is wanting to bring into our lives because we have an issue with the messenger. And I have found that in my life, sometimes God will use a messenger to deliver a message that I need to hear that I may find offensive or maybe I don't even respect a whole lot. And it's because God is using that moment in my life to test me to see whether my pride is going to be greater or my humility, and will I be able to receive the message, even though the messenger in some way may be offensive to me. I think of times being in a church setting where someone is preaching and It's somebody who is just like, it's not my style. Or it's just like, really? I got to listen to it like this? Like it just, we all have things that we like a certain way. And I remember one time where I was just like, God, what? Like, really? What's going on? And God said to me, the Spirit spoke to my heart and said, he's my guy. Listen to him. I was like, okay. But can we get past the offense of the messenger? We have that phrase that we say regularly when someone's delivering news from someone else. They say, don't shoot the messenger. So that's one part of receiving this word is not getting offended at the messenger. This verse says, light in the messenger's eyes brings joy to the heart. I have received things from some people where I don't know that there was a lot of light in their eyes. But when I weigh it out, I realize, well, there's some truth in what they're saying. So there's the messenger, and then the second M word is, there's the message. It's the actual things that are being said. And can we receive them? Can we embrace that? Can we weigh it out with an honest assessment to see, is this something that I need to take a look at? If I said this to this guy at this intersection, this is what the rule of the road is. A good answer would have been, well, I wasn't aware of that. I'll check that out. Thank you very much for letting me know. The very first verse in Proverbs chapter 15 is a verse we should all remember. A gentle answer turns away wrath. A gentle answer turns away wrath. So when we are confronted with truth, with correction, with discipline, in whatever form it comes, if we can just be gracious and say, well, thank you for sharing that with me, I'll give that some thought. And in the process, it may become apparent to us, it is not something to receive, but on the other hand, it may be something that we do need to hear. We weigh that out. With humility, we can receive it. We can discern whether it is correction that is needed in our lives or not. So there's the messenger, there's the message. And last of all, there's the meaning, is what I'll call it. When something like this is said to each of us, kind of a process that happens subconsciously in each of us is, what do you really mean by that? And how we filter that is based on how we view ourselves. If we are certain of who we are and who God has created us to be, and are walking in the true definition of humility, then when someone says that, we can weigh it out properly and it can be received well. But if we are stumbling around with who our identity is, and if we feel like I'm no good, and we have kind of like this shame-based identity where we view everything through kind of a filter of shame, and that can happen because of the things that have been spoken to us in our lives. Where we don't know for sure who we are and who God's created us to be. Recently I heard a story of a fellow who was very successful as an Olympic athlete. And he did really, really well in the speed skating realm. But he had never experienced the love of his father, because his father always told him, you're never going to win, you're going to fail, and what are you doing wasting your time doing that? But yet he succeeded. And he was on the line for a medal race in the Olympics. And just in that moment before the gun went off, he had this thought, I wonder if my father's watching. And he said that thought actually caused him to lose a stride, but he gained it back and he ended up winning, I think, the bronze medal. But he told this fellow who he's telling the story to, I'd trade all my medals to know that my Father loves me. To know that my Father loves me. Well, you know, we all none of us have had perfect parents. But God, our Heavenly Father, is the perfect loving Father. And so to know in your heart, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that you are loved and you are special in His eyes, gives us secure identity in Christ. And then when these things come into our lives, we can be secure, and we can not give meaning to something that is not meant for it to have. I have shared things with people where I felt like I was to share a word of correction or something along those lines, and all of a sudden, instead of them hearing what I've said, the issue has become with the messenger, or it's become the meaning of how they interpret it and filter it through their own identity. And it never actually gets addressed what I actually was bringing up. So you and I can know who we are as followers of Jesus. We can be secure in the Father's love. And then when we receive these things that are correction and discipline in our lives, I trust that we can be teachable. That we can be teachable. Light in the messenger's eyes brings joy to the heart. Good news gives health to the bones. He who heeds life-giving correction will be at home among the wise. Those who disregard discipline despise themselves. But he who heeds correction gains understanding. Wisdom instruction is to fear the Lord. Humility comes before honor. Amen. And God bless you.